Hello guys, this is Reza. Welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. In this session, I'll be showing you how to create a simple scoreboard style shapes and letters using materials within Unreal Engine. Hope you find it useful. Let's dive in. All right, let's clarify scoreboard style effect. That refers to visual elements that mimic the look of digital or LED scoreboard. As you can see here, we have segmented digits like this that mimics classic digital display with segmented block looking numbers or digits, as you can see here. And we have different types like glowing or neon lighting in this case, often with a backlit or bright colored glow to resemble LED lights. And we have a pixelated or dot matrix type of style, which is like a dotted look to replicate old school LED displays where individual lights actually form numbers and letters. And that's the type of style that we would like to create inside Unreal Engine, only using materials and the material editor. No scene files needed. You can follow along with an empty scene. Let's open Unreal Engine and let's get started. Here I am inside Unreal Engine. We perhaps don't need to use the current level or the default level. We're gonna spend pretty much all of our time inside the material editor. So I am going to actually create a folder. So let's go create a new folder. Let's rename that. I am going to recolor that just to make sure that I can find this much easier. And within that, we are going to create our master material. So mm_scoreboard_effects. Let's open that up. And we're pretty much going to spend all of our time in there because the style doesn't need to be shown in the level, but you might as well use that as a material and place that on your static meshes. Now, first things first, we need to think about what sort of physical attributes this material has. So if I bring the reference here, you can see there is not much glossiness, not much reflection, no refraction. And on the master material, you can see we have so many redundant attributes. And why don't we just switch the shading model from default lit to unlit? And with that, we can kind of get rid of so many of these attributes that we actually don't need. You may say, oh, Reza base color was also turned off, and no problems. We are going to use emissive. And again, from the reference, you can see these materials, these dots are actually illuminating a little bit of light. So I'm going to connect anything that I'm supposed to connect to base color into emissive. So that's not going to be a problem. Let's start by taking care of UVs first, because, well, these dots will directly connect to number of tiling in whatever your texture is. It can be, digits, it can be letters, or it can be shapes. But regardless of what you do, the tiling is what makes a difference. So we're gonna spend a good amount of time to make sure the tiling is all sorted. And we pretty much know where to start with tiling. It all starts with texture coordinates. So if I type in coordinates, texture coordinates, that's going to be a great starting point. I've already explained this in number of videos, but if you don't know what a texture coordinate is, or if you're just tuning in, Texture coordinate is used to manipulate the UV coordinates of a texture. This allows you to scale or pan the UVs using complementary expressions or nodes, which changes how the textures appear on a material surface, and we always want to have that. Now you can connect this directly to anything, or you can define your U and V separately. We want dots, so we don't want to stretch any values in U and V, and because of that I'm going to hold that one, left click to create a simple constant value, and this value is pretty much going to take care of U and V because we want round perfect circles. And with these two combo, they always go into multiply, holding down M, left click, so this coordinate index will be taken care of and goes into A input of the multiply, and our value always goes into B. Now there is a node that I will be using for this one, and that is an extremely useful node in cases like this if we want to get float, but we want to round down a float to a nearest whole number, and that node is called floor. So I use floor a lot. It is useful when you need a discrete stepped type of effect instead of smooth transitions, like creating a grid, or in this case pixelation effect. We use floor a lot. So I'm going to connect that to floor, and that goes into B in multiply. Because I'm going to create a material instance, any parameter that I feel it's going to be useful on my material instance, I'm going to parameterize. So I'm going to right click and convert to a parameter, and I'm going to call that density. That's going to define the number of points that we are going to have on our digits, shapes, logo, whatever you put into your texture sample. Now I'm going to give this a value of 1, and apologies for over explaining a few of these things. I often get comments that, Reza, we know this, why you're explaining so many times? Well, we get different kinds of audience on the channel, and I just want to make sure that everyone can follow along with no issues. Cool, let's move on. I'm going to introduce a fracture. So tab, frac, bring that in. And in case if you don't know what frac is, it often used to create looping effects in materials. Extremely useful. It returns a fractional part of a float, discarding the integer. For example, if you input 1.5, it will output 0.5. We're going to connect that here. And if I start previewing this node and bump up my density value to something like 20, you can see now we are getting 20 of these UV coordinates on this box or on this plane. I think plane will get the job done better. I might actually go in here into scene, preview, and for convenient, I'm going to turn off show environment, show floor, and perhaps turn this environment into black. So it is a lot easier to see what's happening here. Cool. Stop previewing here. And now it's time to introduce a very useful material function, which is the heart and the core of what we're trying to do. And that is called radial gradient exponential. Now, this is going to do half of the work for us because it's commonly used, this material function is commonly used to create circular patterns or to add soft round edges in masks. It's perfect for what we are trying to do. Now, this frac goes into our UVs, and of course, what we have in this radial gradient exponential will eventually go into our emissive color. And look at that. We asked for 20 dots. We're getting 20 dots. If I change this to 10, we get 10. You may have noticed that it's awfully soft around the edges, and that's the nature of this material function by default. And one easy way to fix that is to give a value to the density. So I can create a scalar expression or a simple constant, or I can just right click on it and go into promote to parameter. And let's call that softness or radial softness, just to be very clear with our intention. And right now, there isn't really no value assigned to this. Let's bump it up to something like 50, and we're getting a really cool result. Now, you can see these circles are awfully big. They're kind of touching, whereas in our reference, that is really not the case. So you can see there's a little bit of gap, little bit of gap in between each circle. And that is defined by adding a radius sort of amount. So holding down one, click, put something in there, and let's go 5. See what we're getting. It's too much. 1, still a lot. 0.4. Ah, perfect. So let's go 0.5. No, that's not good. Perhaps 0.45 would give us something that we want. That's exactly what we're looking for, which kind of is similar to the level of distance that we have here. Perhaps these guys are slightly closer to each other. So 0.42 should do the trick. Now at this point, some of you with a little bit of experience might say, oh, well, the job is done. Just import your texture samples, multiply, and it's all good. So let's bring us a texture. I'm going to bring the logo of the channel. You can just bring anything that you want. It doesn't need to be grayscale or anything, as long as it's texture. And let's press M to multiply. So radial goes to A, our RGB, or if it's a grayscale, a single channel, goes to B, and that goes to here. It's not really doing what it's supposed to do. So let's investigate how we can make the job easier and how we can get closer to the result that we want. Well, the reality of the matter is we need to find a way to pixelate this guy, right? So that's the first purpose or an idea. Now, first things first, we don't need this multiplication. That can go directly into emissive. I'm going to move this one here and save some room, because we are going to repurpose the multiply node to create pixelation effects for this image right here. So let's do that. First things first, I'm going to round down the result of this, or the value, the outcome of this multiplication, using, yes, you guessed it, floor. So I'm going to type in floor, and the result of that can be divided by this value right here. So I'm going to type in divide, floor goes to A, and the other floor that is rounding down, our density, can go to B, and that goes into our UVs. Now, right now, if I preview this, let's go start previewing. We're sort of getting the pixelation that we want, kinda, but it's not quite there yet. It's a very low res and it's cube. What we want based on our reference is the circles, the ones that we are going to create using this guy. So the circularized part, this will take care of that, but we still need to add some bits and pieces, moderate the values a little bit. So we still have a little bit left to do for the pixelation side of things. So let's continue. We are going to use multiplication. So multiply. And right now B is set to 1, which is not strong enough, but let's continue and see if we need to intensify that. I'm going to round it down, and I need to find a way to limit my range so things won't get out of control. So I have a choice. I can use clamp, and I can use a cheaper version of clamp, which is saturate. And perhaps you know this already if you're tuning this channel for the first time. Just for you guys, saturate is very similar to clamp, but specifically limits values between 0 and 1, whereas clamps you can specify min and max. Now it's time to bring a linear interpolate, and again, a very, very useful node. I use this lerp node all the time because it gives me alpha channel, and that's exactly what I want to use. So with this lerp node, you need to just think about channel B of the lerp node and what you put in here in the radius. I'm just pretty much going to copy and paste. Now, in order to know which result is a good result, I'm just going to plug that into radius to see what kind of results we are getting. Now, certainly 1 isn't working for us. It's still black. I'm going to go 2, and we immediately see the result. So seems like 3 is getting the job done. 2 is going to limit our range. So just like that, I'm getting the result that I want. You may say, well, can we add to the number of dots? Of course, that's why we have this one right here. And if I put 20 for my parameterized scalar expression, which we call density, you kind of see the pixelated version of our image, which is very similar, to be honest, to these guys. So look at that. I'm getting kind of the same shape here. Now let's continue because we still have more things to do. In terms of pixelation, I can go in there and put down, I don't know, 40, 60, and get the scale that I want. But right now it's just black and white. Let's go really quickly and make a material instance out of that. So right click on the master material, create material instance. I'm going to just go in there. Instead of MM, I'm going to go MI, material instance. Cool. I'm going to save. And let's take care of the colors in the next chapter in order to bring a little bit of variety. Say we want to make this effect blue, or we want to make it red, or we may want to add a little bit of glow in there. Sometimes even in some of these effects, the color is randomized. So let's see how we can kind of add an extra level to what we have in the next chapter. Now we've made great progress so far. So if I go in there, I can increase the number of dots based on the reference. And if I look really closely, if I can get close enough, you can see the radial softness is set to the default value of 50. If I bring it down to something like 1, 2, or 3, just adds a little bit of realism into the mix in case if you don't want the design to be crystal clear sharp, then that would be the point to jump in and change the values. I'm going to keep that to something like 60, 70 regarding the density. And let's move back and bring these guys over. Perhaps I can do a double click to create one of these guys and move it up. Keep everything nice and clean. And we can perhaps do a quick backdrop here. So C for comment, and I'm going to call that UVs. We want to stay nice and clean. So after that, I am going to focus on the color. When it comes to color, we really need a main or middle person. And that middle person, anything to do with color, is usually a material function, a very useful material function called hue shift. So I'm going to type in hue shift, and that's a material function, as you can see, and it's got two sections to deal with. So basically what hue shift does, it shifts the color, the hue of an input color by a specific amount. Why it's useful? Because you can create color variations without changing the texture or the color chip itself, because it kind of shifts the hue value and alter the base color's hue. That's why it kind of works like magic. So mainly I apply the texture or the color always into the texture, and you can see it asks for V3. So if you want to apply color, you definitely need to hold down 3 and click, because we need these 3 channels to be plugged in here. And as for this part, the percentage, that's where you can sort of get creative. You can clamp the values, we can use constant, you can use textures, and the combination of both is going to randomize your color value. So let's start with actually texture first. And I don't want to apply texture here because I already have a texture. I just want to apply a color. So to do that, let's just create a color. And just because the color of my logo is green, I'm gonna go with green. That should do. Obviously, I need to multiply it and plug B into our radial exponential. Eventually, this will replace this input right here. So what I can do is just to hold down M and click. This will go into B. The result is gonna go into emissive. And as for A, that goes into my color. You may say, hang on a second, that works. What is the role of this guy? Well, we are going to channel it through this. So that's going to be like a middleman in here, so we can create variations for the color. Obviously, if solid color is what you're looking for, then you're pretty much all sorted. You can go blue, you can go red, and you can go green. But for now, we are going to actually take it up a notch. We're going to apply this to textures and that one to emissive, so we can benefit from this parameter here. So why don't I select these guys, move them up so I can put them into a comment section. They're separated from the rest of the pack. Perhaps this one can stay here. This one can also stay here, and I'm going to do the rest in here. So I'm going to go all the way back, and let's create a constant vector 2D. So we only have 2 channels to deal with, and I'm going to throw in an add node. X can go into B, and for A, why don't we benefit from the divide node for our case? See that divide node right here? We can perhaps bring these guys in here and use the divide node for A. And in case if you're wondering what I'm doing, this part is totally optional, because the whole idea is to find a way to randomize things. Now, one old trick that I have used in the past countless number of times, even outside Unreal Engine and Epic Games land, is to add noise. So best or easiest, I should say, way to do it is to bring a noise sample, plug that into UVs, and extract the value, RGB out the value, and only then play around with what you want to play around with. That's the whole idea behind repurposing this divide, because it goes to UVs, so you can totally repurpose that and bring that into UVs like so. As for the noise, I'm not really too picky. Let's see if we have any noise. Perlin. Yeah, that should do the trick, really. That's gonna work for us beautifully. Since we're not really dealing with strong values, you need to sort of raise values or control the intensity of and fall off of your values, so things will be quite noticeable. And you do that usually using power. So if I type in power, that is a very useful node to sort of randomize your values, not just color, any values. This one goes into base, and the base will go into a clamp, because while you are going to control some values, you don't want to go too crazy. So clamp, just to be kind of safe. Now that goes into clamp, and you need to specify min and max. Min can be 0. Max I would like to control. So that's another beauty of using clamp as opposed to saturate, is it kind of gives you min and max, whereas in saturate it assumes it's 0 to 1. I'm actually going to parameterize that, because you never know, I might be able to use that. Promote, I'm going to call that hue. Now the value I'm going to put in there doesn't really matter as long as it's not 0. Maybe 0.5 does the trick for us. And in power, this is the sort of fade in, fade out, the intensity of your values. So you can totally parameterize that as well and benefit from it. So I'm going to parameterize that as well. You can call this dissolve or softness or color intensity, anything that you find useful and you feel like it makes sense, you can totally use that. Now, where does this clamp go? Well, you guessed it, right into this percentage parameter. Let's go and plug that in. And as soon as I do that, you can see the color, the hue changes, which you can totally control, and you can change the intensity however you want to. So I can go 0.5 or even 1, and as soon as I do that, it looks into my Perlin and it's going to change that. And the UVs of my texture will get controlled by this divide value. So I hope it kind of makes sense. So let's save and go into our material instance. And now we have 2 more attributes to deal with. Dissolve, perhaps capital D. You can also put them into groups and benefit from that as well. I'm going to select all of that and call that hue, and perhaps give it a slightly different color. I'm going to go in here, enabling those. So first things first, you can change the intensity. If you want solid color, you can perhaps parameterize this as well. So I'm going to go right click, convert to parameter, and I'm going to call that solid color or base color. Really doesn't matter, or just color. Save. And now you should be having this color chip as well to be able to change stuff. So if you just want to deal with color, nothing else, perhaps you set the hue to 0 and you just go play around with colors. Happy days. But if you would like to include just a tad of randomization, that would be the time that you use this parameter right here. And I can totally go crazy on this, and you can see adding this based on this noise pattern right here, the one that I have. You can change that and get a slightly different result. And with a slightly different power value, I can totally add even more variation into the mix. How cool is that? So totally your choice what you want to do and how you plan on randomizing your values. Again, you don't like this, you just zero out the hue to stop the randomization. That's going to take out hue shift material function out of the equation, and you're left with solid color to play around with. And that, my friends, would be the end of this tutorial. Very straightforward, but an opportunity to introduce new properties, new nodes, new tools, different ideas like floor. We've never talked about that in our previous tutorials. We've never talked about fracture in our previous tutorials. So again, a new opportunity to learn something new. I hope you found this video useful and use these tricks when the situation calls for it. Until the next tutorial, see you guys later, and thank you for your ongoing support.